Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The unbeaten Chinese heavyweight Zhang Zhilei has become the latest heavyweight to join the Triller Fight Club movement. So he has been added to the Teofimo Lopez and George Kambosos undercard. See here on screen, this is what Zhang Zhilei has posted to social media. So a promo graphic on the left part of the post, and then saying, "Watch me fight June 19 at the Triller Fight Club, #Lopez Kambosos event in Miami." So this is quite an interesting development for a few reasons. One, he becomes another heavyweight after Michael Hunter to join Triller, which has really been spending into the market. So you'd have to imagine he's going to get well paid for this. But at a couple of weeks' notice, let's keep the expectations in check regarding the opponent. If Michael Hunter is facing a guy in Mike Wilson, Zhang Zhilei at even less notice is probably not going to be pitted with anyone good. But what is interesting about this is Zhang Zhilei had actually been with Matchroom. He'd signed a promotional deal with Matchroom back in September 2020. He had actually been working with them before that, but then he signed full on with Matchroom, just outright with them. He had previously been with Rock Nation when Rock Nation was in boxing, co-promoted then obviously with Matchroom. He fought on a Monaco card against Andrei Rudenko, but September 2020 announced he was going to be with them. A bit of a splash, obviously. Here's some of the press release on screen. Here's a graphic, basically saying I need the opportunities to prove, I'm the best guy out of China and I can make some noise in the division, blah. All that sort of normal sort of stuff you expect to hear in that heavyweight say. But now we have him less than a year later out on the streets under a different promotional banner that he's fighting for Triller Fight Club. So what's gone on here? So we do know that with Matchroom, he had the two fights. So he fought Devin Vargas, and that was back in November 2020. A so-so sort of performance, but with a spectacular finish. And then he had what was a very entertaining fight, but also life and death fight with Jerry Forrest. So he knocked him down in each of the first, 3 rounds, and then basically faded badly. Jerry Forrest took over the fight, and he was literally out on his feet, Zhang Zhilei, by the end of that, and escaped with a majority draw. So his record at the moment, 22 wins, 17 KOs with the 1 draw, and that is with Forrest. So I think many people expected that there might be a rematch with Forrest, and that would feature on a Matchroom card, but apparently not. But I would know after that fight, yes, so Zhang Zhilei had to actually go to hospital, and he was there for a number of days, and his advisors, that sort of stuff, said that there was more going on than meets the eye, but and that there was a few underlying conditions. But yeah, whatever, make of that what you will in terms of that situation. But I thought that, he'd have more than 2 fights on his Matchroom deal, but apparently not. So whether Matchroom has let him go, or whether this is he's managed to get out of his contract early, it's unclear, but he is no longer with Matchroom if he's fighting on Triller Fight Club. And in a way, this might sort of extinguish the sort of talk that has been floating around with Zhang Zhilei for about 2, 3, 4 years now. And some of that has been sort of, kept alive because Barry Hearn, Eddie Hearn's father, had for a long time talked about, wanting to expand into Asia, maybe have a fight at the Bird's Nest. And the logical choice, if there was an Anthony Joshua fight for a global event, it was going to be at the Bird's Nest, would be Zhang Zhilei. So there'd been talk about that for some time. And part of what people have ruminated on about why Matchroom was interested in signing and having Zhang Zhilei fight on their cards was to eventually have him in a bigger fight, and most likely in China. But probably, maybe that's just, sort of going to pass by the wayside now, because Zhang Zhilei is 38 years old, and obviously life and death in his last fight against Jerry Forrest, who's maybe a top 40, top 50 type guy at this point. Zhang Zhilei performed well in the first 3 or 4 rounds, but went absolutely downhill after that in terms of his conditioning. So perhaps based on that performance, maybe they've just decided to cut their losses. It could be just that simple. But, obviously for Zhang, this could be a case of, he's decided, he's got to chase other opportunities, because let's face it, some of these guys who have been in the Matchroom stable, we've talked about this before on the channel and on Patreon too, some of these guys on the periphery, they're good fringe heavyweights, maybe not quite at world level, waiting for opportunities. They just can't seem to get enough fights and enough of the right fights. And I think Zhang Zhilei falls into that camp as well. You can certainly argue that there are others too. Martin Bakole probably falls into that camp. Hughie Fury sort of sitting, waiting, watching right now. There are others. Filip Hrgović also comes to mind. So we've talked about, well, why aren't they matching more of these guys with each other? But now that Zhang has sort of left the tent, well, apparently that's probably not going to happen. So the whole sort of, take him to China, have him in a big fight, even if it was someone else, that's probably just not going to happen now. And at 38 years old, if he really hasn't sort of cashed in on the sport, and he's going to Triller now, I mean, he had no obligations, no mandatories, nothing else on the sort of ledger right now. I can understand why he would want to take the money and run if it was there. And it was ironic because last year in 2020, Matchroom dropped Hunter, and then obviously a few weeks later, Zhang Zhilei signed on with Matchroom. And some people at the time were like, what? They dropped Hunter and signed this guy? And at the time I said it would have been purely about money, because Zhang would have come a lot cheaper than Hunter. But now ironic that the guy that some people said replaced him in that stable is not in that stable, but he's also joining Michael Hunter at Triller and is going to be fighting on that same card. So I guess maybe a little bit serendipitous. But anyway, what do you make of this news? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.